Hello. Welcome. I'm glad to have you. Dare I say it? As I clean my camera. Kawhi, what do you think? Should I say it?
Indubitably.
Okay, thanks, Kawhi. It's good to have you. It is really freaking good to have you. I'm sorry. I know it's been a little bit. Got busy with work, personal stuff going on. You know how it be, but it's tough around here. I'm not looking for any other Kawhi commercial.
Opa.
As we all say in unison. But no, thank you so much for watching this. I really do appreciate it. It's a little bit of a weird format, but we're going to make it work. I found a transactions page for each team. I found a salary page for each team. And I found an aprons page for each team. Yeah, no, it's not great. It's not it's not great. It's not a great system, I will admit. But we're going to make it work because this is the NBA off-season rankings. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Opa.
Thanks, Kawhi. It's a snowball. Let's start out first. We're just going to go in alphabetical order. We will start out with the Atlanta Hawks. Your Atlanta Hawks? Dare I say my Atlanta Hawks? Who's to say? This was a pretty funny trade. Oh, that's funny. I commented on a post of on TikTok of a guy saying guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Anthony Black, Anthony Simons were all underrated, and I'm like, there's a good argument that all of these players are overrated. And somebody liked it and said facts, and I said Garrett, more like Garrett knows ball, and he said I need to hear some of your basketball takes. So maybe I'll just give him this video. But yeah, we're here. And we're starting with a good one because we're starting with the Hawks and Pelicans trade at draft night. Yes, I am including draft night trades. I'm going basically the day after the finals, if I'm able to. Some stuff obviously isn't confirmed, so it's not always going to be on these sites, but, well, not necessarily put pen to ink yet, like they're going to happen, but not, right, like you get it. But June 25th, 2025, one of the funniest trades ever happened. The Atlanta Hawks acquired the number 23 pick from the Pelicans, who got it from the Pacers, the 2026 first-round pick, and this is the big one, because it is the most favorable between the Pelicans and Milwaukee. Well, the Pelicans acquired number 13, in which they drafted basically the Giannis Valanciunas of Zion Williamson's, Derek Queen. Now, I don't really know what to say here, but this is not a good trade. I'll put it just like this. This is not a good trade. When there are reports coming out that teams called up Troy Weaver, that teams called up Joe Dumars and are like, is this real? When there are reports coming out that the Atlanta Hawks had to get on a FaceTime with Joe Dumars because the trade is so bad that they thought they were being scammed, it's not a good trade. Like, I don't know what exactly Troy Weavers and Joe Dumars are doing. I'm not sure they do either. But for Atlanta, who is the focus of our discussion now, I love it. I love it. You get what is potentially going to be a lottery pick, potentially a high lottery pick, depending on, Giannis and Zion's health. I was looking. This is not a bad toothpaste. potentially a high lottery pick depending on Zion or Giannis's health, and ultimately you still got your guy in Asa Newell anyway. Now, admittedly, I'm not in love with Asa Newell. Asa Newell. Asa Newell? Asa Newell? I don't know, one of the two. But I think at 23, that is totally fine. All reports show they were planning on taking him at 13 anyways. So to get what could potentially be a really good pick and Asa Newell, love it. This one, I don't mind this move. I think this is a totally fine move. Fits a little bit odd, but Hawks acquire Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and the Timberwolves acquire a 2027 second round pick and cash. We don't know the value, but just sign and trade. But I think this is an interesting move. Nickeil making, I believe, $14 million a year. 14, maybe a little bit more. Sorry, I should have done this part first. I believe it's about $18 million. $18 million, 4 years, $60 million. So 15, I guess, yeah, because he did just get extended, so it's 14 this year. But $15 million. It's a bit of a weird fit next to Trey. I understand Nickeil is, a 2-3, but he's not huge either, and I think his perimeter defense can be a little bit overrated at times. And it's not necessarily the sort of physical, brutish perimeter defenders that you would need next to Trae Young. Like, I'd much rather have I don't know, like a Herb Jones. Well, Herb Jones is one of the best defenders in the league. Who's a good perimeter defender? Like, I'd much rather have an OG perimeter defense where he's not great laterally, but he's going to be able to be long enough and body you up enough to where you're not going to be able to get around him and, pass out of him. He's going to be a vortex, a lengthy physical guy rather than a lengthy, scrawny guy who may be better perimeter defensive-wise but can't guard up. Now, here's a fun one that I really don't care to trade. We have the 7-team trade. I'm not even going to go into the details because we've talked about them already, and most of them don't matter at all. The only one that matters is the Phoenix Suns Houston Rockets trade, and we talked about that like a month ago at this point. But in this trade, the Hawks acquired David Roddy and 2031 Houston protected swap option and cash. That pick is protected 56 to 60. So they're not getting that pick. And, I mean, shocker. It's got a swap option too, so chances are there's not going to be anything to it. But, it is what it is. I don't think they gave away anything. Yeah, I'm not seeing them give away anything. But then here's probably it's their biggest move, but, if you're an NBA pervert, this might be their second biggest move. But I loved this trade at the time, and honestly, I still do. The Hawks acquired Kristaps Porzingis for George Niang, Terrence Mann, a 2031 second-round pick, and a 2025 first-round pick, which ended up being Drake Powell. Beautiful. Beautiful. This draft is not very deep. Actually, no, that second comes from the Nets because of the touching rule. So, yeah. First from the Hawks, didn't end up being a very good pick. For Kristaps Porzingis on 1 year at $30 million, and they get a second back. I think this is totally fine. Porzingis, we saw him, lose his soul on a basketball court. A Dementor was actively sucking it out of him anytime he played basketball. I don't know what was going on with him. Apparently he was sick, but if it were to come out that he had 2 collapsed lungs and 3 torn Achilles, I would not be surprised. He was awful. I don't know what was going on with him. Obviously Porzingis has had, health issues, to put it lightly. So this could blow up in their face, but it only cost them George Niang and Terrence Mann, two guys who I hate to say it, aren't very good. And you get potentially an all-star. A guy who's a pretty dang good fit next to Trae Young, a guy who can really anchor your defense with Trae Young, and a guy who can space the floor and give Quinn Snyder an extra option that he hasn't had in his time there, a shooting big, and a good shooting big. I'm sorry, Onyeka, you're just not a very, very good shooting big, my guy. But let's see. So that's all their trades. For their signings, signed this Asanuel. Eli Ndiaye, he's an interesting player. I'm not going to go into him because ultimately it just doesn't matter. But young center, sort of interesting. Hasn't really done anything. But on a two-way, we'll have to see how he plays out this year. Obviously, they got David Roddy. And this is one that's sort of interesting that I'm not entirely sure I get. They signed Luke Kennard to a 1-year, $11 million deal. Let's see. I swear they signed... Did they not sign him? No, I'm thinking of the Pistons. Sorry about that. Although, I mean, Luke Kennard would be a fantastic fit on the Pistons. Signed Luke Kennard, signed Jacob Topping, signed Nikola Durasic, signed Keaton Wallace, all on two ways. And, never mind. They waived the worst player in the NBA, David Roddy. Well, would I rather have Cody Williams or David Roddy? You know, I'd rather just take the Martian death beam that what's-his-face was talking about. But I like it. I hate to say it. I like their offseason. They got a great first-round pick. They got their guy in Asanuel. They acquired a potentially perfect fit for, a first-round pick, a contract, and George Niang. All of those players are also just bad players, coincidentally. And they got a potentially really good 3-and-D guy who might fit perfect next to Trey. Luke Kennard, I like that signing, but it's pretty unsubstantial. And yeah, they earned the award for Fleece of the Year. And I hate to say it, because I've been critical of them before, but they get an A. We're going F to A. A+, whatever. But whatever the highest ranking you can think of is, they get it. I think they killed this offseason. There's certainly moves I think they could have made better. Like, the Kennard signing is interesting just because you need somebody who can shoot and pass a little bit to replace Bogdanovich. But $11 million? Do you not try and go out and get just a cheap backup point guard and a defensive wing to replace that? But I get it. Shooter, passer, totally fine. And look, maybe I end up with egg on my face. Like, I could totally see that working out fine. But yeah, next up, we have your Boston Celtics. As I'm pulling them up, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Again, apologies that it's taken me a bit to get this here. But we're here. We're happy to be here. Dare I say it? I can't find my contract page. Never mind, I did. Atlanta, let's look at them cap situation-wise. Atlanta is in the first apron with cap space. They are... Are they in the first apron? First apron is $195 million. They're at 100. Oh, I see what it's saying. Okay, so Atlanta is about $13 million away from the first apron. So they could do another signing. Like, they could, make another trade or have a pretty substantial signing. I'm thinking maybe I'll do, like potential free agency fits just coming up. We also have, restricted free agency that's going on, so who knows, maybe Josh Giddey is your next Atlanta Hawk. But, again, acquired a potential star for cheap, an expiring contract for cheap in Porzingis. You got your guy in David Roddy, and you got probably a guaranteed lottery pick. So I gotta give it an A. I gotta give it an A. They low-key cooked. No. I'll say it. They cooked. No. They cooked. Boston. So their first move of the offseason was to trade away Drew Holiday, making $32 million, for Anthony Simons, making $27 million, for a 2030 New York pick, and a 2031 second from Portland. Now, that New York pick may not be bad, but ultimately it's a second. Chances are, Occam's razor, it's, I'm trying to think of a second round pick. It's going to be Miaoni. He's just going to enter the draft again at like 40. But talent-wise, I don't love it. I'd say they're probably in the same range of player. You have a guy who's good offensive player, horrible defensively, and you have a player who's really good defensively, and horrible offensively. Has Drew Holiday slipped? Yes. Do I love this move? No. No, I can't say I do. But in terms of just getting off of contracts, I get it. Right? Like, you're not doing anything this year. I think it's probably right to trade away Drew. Just strike anytime you can with a contract like that. Like, we saw Drew fall off quite a bit. We saw him not be what they need him to be. And ultimately, if you can get off that contract for a shorter term deal in Simons and more potential value, fine. Washington traded up, took the Boston Celtics pick. The Celtics had the number 32 pick. Somehow Boston ended up with that. I'm not quite sure how Boston ended up with that second, but with the number 32 pick, the Magic selected Noah Penda. The Celtics got back a second-round pick, 46 Amari Williams, who's interesting. I kind of like him. Like, I get it. Max Shulga, I'm not as high on him, but I think he's okay. And then 2 conditional picks, and those conditions are 2 conditional seconds, I should say. I'll clarify if they're first. Just when I say picks, assume they're seconds. I mean, they're thrown in there like candy. But a 2026 second from Orlando and a 2027 second from Orlando. The condition for the 2026 one is the most favorable of the Pistons, Bucks, or Magic's second-round pick, and that could be good, right? Like, the Bucks could be bad. Like, that could very well be a high second. We're not sure. Oh, no, there we do. And the conditions for the 2027 one are the most favorable of the Celtics or Magic's 2027 pick. So basically a swap, right? Like, swap for the most valuable one. This is the last trade that they made on July 7th. And this is one that, again, I don't love it, but I understand it. And I'll explain why I don't love it more in the future. Value-wise, I get it. Get off that contract, but I'd rather keep it. This is the Porzingis trade we mentioned earlier. Tingus Pingus, 2026 second. Boston gets Georges Niang, 2031 second-round pick from Cleveland. Cash, right? Brooklyn gets Terrence Mann, Drake Powell, and that's it. So for Boston, I don't love it. I'm going to quickly go over their cap situation, then I'll go over their free agency, then I'll go back to their cap situation, but ultimately, cap's going to be pretty short. Like, it's not going to be super long, but... So, Boston is really close to being out of the second apron. They are... Let's see. $207 million keeps you in the second apron. They are $208 million in the second apron. And that sucks. That's not good. That's not good, right? They're not hard capped in the second apron. They do have a way to get out. But if they don't, I want to say they end up in the repeater tax. Yeah, they're currently a repeater team. They can reset the repeater tax if they get out of it for this year. So my guess is we do see a trade coming up in the future, be that Simons for a protected second or something. But that's the biggest issue I have with this trade is taking back Georges Niang's contract, right? Like $1 million in the NBA usually isn't a lot, but it's the difference between, $100 million potentially on your tax bill and $50 million, and you may not be able to trade for trade or aggregate salary, right? That's the only issue I have with this deal. Porzingis honestly wasn't great for them. I know that's maybe a hot take, but if you look at his stats, like fit-wise, when he played, fine, but he was always injured in the playoffs, really didn't play in the regular season, didn't do anything that Al Horford really couldn't do. And ultimately, I'm fine with moving on, right? Like, he's only getting older, his knees are only getting weaker, his bones are only getting brittler. So, I get it. For their signings, they've made sort of a surprising amount of signings. They got Hugo Gonzalez, who I don't love as a player. He's sort of interesting, but that's purely like measurements wise, and then it's also just not the craziest measurements. But they got Amari Williams, Max Shulga, and I guess they re-signed JD Davidson, I guess. Okay. G League legend. But I like Amari Williams. They need centers as much as I love Utah State legend Amaesh Keita. You probably don't want him running your team's defense. I understand they have a very perimeter-oriented defense, but you get what I'm saying. Semantics. Sorry, I know I'm saying a lot, but obviously got Anthony Simons, got Georges Niang, signed Luka Garza. Sorry, acid reflux. Signed Luka Garza, 2-year, $5 million contract, right? 2-year minimum, totally fine. Josh Minot, 2-year, $5 million contract, 2026-2027 team option. This is a totally fine prove-it deal. I like Minot. I think he's been interesting when he's played. Will he turn into anything? Probably not. But if he does, and he does turn into a good player, you can have him for cheap, and you can use him to contend with Tatum back next year. So I want to give them higher just because usually, like, I don't inherently disagree or think any of their moves were terrible. It's just the lack of other moves is what I disagree with. If they were able to get out of the second apron, if they were able to shed more cap, I would think it's fine. But they still probably need to sign more free agents. Their center depth is really, really bad. And, well, I guess even just their power forward, small forward depth, guard-wise, they're relatively fine. But their big depth, I'll say, isn't great. And ultimately, it's tough because they're in such a unique position where they're trying to balance being bad this year while trying to contend next year. So I'm going to give them a C for now. I'd give them a B if they were able to get out of the second apron. I love that they got off Drew Holiday's contract. I think that's totally fine. Like, I actually think they won that trade pretty substantially. Even if they are similar tier players, Drew is, almost a decade older than... Well, no, Simons is one of those... He's very JID coded, where he's much older than you'd think. Sorry. Your boy hurt his back at work today, so I'm plugging in my heating pad. Oh dear. I accidentally unplugged my laptop. Everything is going awry. The basketball gods have hated me. I'm sorry, basketball gods. I know Drew Holiday's defense is good, but it's also fallen off substantially in prior years. Alright, the basketball gods let me plug my stuff back in, so we're good. Crisis averted. But again, like the Holiday deal, I don't mind the Porzingis deal. I just think you still need to move either a Simons, a Hauser, potentially a Brown, but probably not. Something to get out of the second apron. And if you move a Brown, you might be able to get out of the first apron. I know Brown's, a Celtics guy, right? Like, you just signed him to a huge extension. You want him around. But I don't think it's the worst idea to trade him. You don't know what what Jason Tatum will be when he's back. And ultimately, you don't know what Jaylen Brown's going to be like a year from now. He's sort of towards the end of his prime. He's, I believe, early 30s, maybe 29. So, we'll have to see. This is one that is still very active. Like, I would not be surprised if after this video, trade comes out that they sent Sam Hauser to the Hornets for a second, right? But as of right now, I'm giving them a C. Which I know is funny because C for Celtics, ha ha ha, but whatever. Oh boy, this is a ha 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 ha. Oh, okay. The Nets. There's so much I can say here, but I'm not sure what all I need to say. I guess I'll start off with this. They were a part of the 7-team historic groundbreaking trade that Shams kept posting about, being like, this is great. Sorry, I hurt my thumb. I don't know if you can see it. I cut through my thumbnail, and I cut the tip. Sorry, I should have said trigger warning. My fault. They were part of the 7-team historic trade, and with that historic trade, they got a 2026 conditional pick that is so... Oh, no, I guess we do. Brooklyn receives the least favorable of either the Clippers or the more favorable of the Celtics, Pacers, and Heat's 2026 pick. So it's a lot, and ultimately Celtics, Pacers, and Heat will all be pretty fine. Pacers could tank, but ultimately it's not going to be anything substantial. This is how you know, like, if you like gross stuff, you're at the right channel. I mean, this is perversion for the NBA at its finest right here. I mean, the biggest thing they did was the draft, and I don't love it. Let's start off with their first pick. I say first pick. Their first pick at number 8. Yegor Demens. He keeps changing how he says his name. And I know that sounds bad, but look it up. I'm not kidding. He said he pronounces his name a certain way when he was at BYU. He said it when he was at Summer League. He said it when he was at the Combine. I'm just going to call him Igor, even though it's like Yegor Demon or something. Igor's interesting, but I don't think he's good. I know on my big board I had him semi-high just because of some of the tools he had. On my final big board, which I didn't end up posting, I did that like a week later. Just after I was able to watch some more guys and stuff. I was thinking about maybe doing a video on that, but ultimately I just ran out of time. But I had him pretty low. I think I had him mid-20s. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't hate tools he picks if they're unique enough. The issue with Demin is the lack of creation. As an on-ball as an on-ball passer, he's brilliant, right? Like one of the better passers we've seen in a little bit in college basketball. Averaged decent assist numbers, hucked up a ton of threes, only shot like 20% from there. Just was not good. But like I'll just put it bluntly, he was not very good. And for Boston to pick up number 8, or not Boston, sorry, Brooklyn to pick him number 8, not great. Bars. Another pick that didn't make sense, especially if you're trying to run and develop Igor, is picking Nolan Traore, who I do like, but I don't love he's stuck behind Igor. Nolan is sort of viewed as an unknown, but I think he has a very high potential. His ability to just, I ended up really rising him. I think he ended up 10, a little bit up above that on my final big board. Super quick questions about the shot. Think of stereotypical European guards, but throw Russell Westbrook in, and then that's Nolan Traore. Ben Sarah, like Demin, he's probably another guy who's best at wing because he can't create. He's an okay passer, but can't shoot. Again, can't create, can't really defend. And like Demin, will probably end up stuck at wing because of his size, but if he's stuck at wing, he'll likely be off-ball wing because he can't create, and if he's an off-ball wing, you lose his most valuable asset, which is passing, right? Like copy and paste Igor on to Ben Sarah. Danny Wolf was our final pick. I didn't hate that pick at the time. We'll have to see how that turns out. He has not looked particularly good in Summer League, which is concerning because Wolf is a bit of an older player. But at 27, I think that's fine. They initially picked Adu Thoreau, which I loved, but then the Lakers traded for him in that 17 trade that I talked about. And then they made a bunch of small moves. They waived Maxwell Lewis, which I sort of get, but not really at the same time. He's 22, admittedly. I don't think he's very good, but he was only costing you $3 million. He really, he's a potentially decent wing. Why waive him? Waive a 22-year-old making like $2 million, but they exercise the team options for Keon Johnson. Don't love, but fine. Jalen Wilson, interesting player, but probably not going to end up being anything. For Martin, Drew Timme, Zaire Williams, they all... actually, no, sorry. Drew Timme to Jalen Wilson with Tyrese Martin in between. Sorry, I almost skipped him. God forbid I skipped Tyrese Martin. Exercise the team option for all of them, which I think is fine. Why not? Bunch of young guys that you can take a swing on. Go ahead. And then they got what I think. Well, I guess we got to talk about him first. Zaire Williams, 2-year, $12 million contract with Brooklyn, and includes a team option for 2026-2027. Fine contract. Zaire showed he might be able to be an NBA player. Helped out with his team a lot. Still does have a bit of upside, not much, but totally fine. Another really good contract. This is one that I think is a steal. Day'Ron Sharpe, 2-year, $12 million. Now, is Day'Ron Sharpe anything absurd? No. Right? He's just not. Sorry, I'm pulling up something real quick just to show why I like him. So, in 50 games this year, had some injuries, admittedly. In 50 games this year, in 18 minutes, he averaged 8 points, 1.8 assists, 1 steal, 1 block in 18 minutes. Got 6.6, close to 7 rebounds. Shot 52 from the field and 24 from 3. Now, that's nothing insane, right? But remember the fact it's on 18 minutes. 1 steal, 1 block, 7 rebounds. I hate to say it, but that's pretty damn good. Per 36. 16 points, 2 blocks, 1.6 steals, 3.6 assists, 13 rebounds, 75 from the free throw line, 24 still from 3. That doesn't really change, but again, is that because Day'Ron Sharpe is playing against a Eastern Conference that doesn't really have great backup centers? Yeah, probably. If Day'Ron Sharpe was anything great, would they have gotten Danny Wolf? Depends. Danny Wolf is probably more of a ball handler who can play next to Sharpe, but for a guy who is still relatively young, and Day'Ron Sharpe is, I think 2 years, $12 million is a great deal. I think there's probably 15 plus NBA teams out there who would have loved to have him. And I think this is just a totally fine deal. Tyson Etienne, 2-year contract with Brooklyn. Whatever. Igor, Sarov, Wolf, Nolan all became Brooklyn Nets. Terrence Mann, Drake Powell, Mega Porter Jr., and Drake Powell again. I guess Drake Powell was part of that 7-team trade, sorry. All ended up on Brooklyn. Now, people have criticized this trade weirdly more for Denver. I think this was fine. Michael Porter Jr. is making a fairly substantial amount of money. Unfortunately, he's not an expiring contract. The last year had a player option on it, but after they won the championship, that got rid of the player option. Or excuse me, the team, sorry. The team option. But after they won the championship, that got revoked. So you have 2 years of Michael Porter Jr., which, I mean, even if he had a player option, he'd pick that up, but they don't. He doesn't, I should say. That 2032 pick is probably more interesting than Michael Porter Jr., if I'm being totally honest. And ultimately, I think it was pretty neutral for Brooklyn. I would have loved if they could get, one more pick for their troubles of taking a 2-year contract rather than a 1-year contract. But ultimately, Cam Johnson, you got a first for him. You got somebody who you can maybe flip, but at the very least is just going to fill a roster spot, get you above the cap minimum, and be a fine player for you. Going to sell you some jerseys, win you a couple games if he gets white hot, and who knows, right? Like maybe 27, 28-year-old Michael Porter Jr. turns into the next T-Mac. We'll see. But value-wise, I think this is totally fine. Drake Powell, 4 years, $16 million. Actually, not bad money for end of first round pick. Next, this is a team. Honestly. You can follow along if you know the NBA and the alphabet well. It is the Charlotte Hornets. And yes, I'm sighing for a reason, and it's not necessarily anything that the Hornets did. It's what they did to me. All right? It's over there. I don't want to go grab it just because I don't want to, stand up and mess up the video. But we'll get to that. I'm going to delay the pain. On draft night, the Hornets got back Vasilij Micic, a 2025 first-round pick, which ended up being Liam McNeely, a 2029 first-round pick, least favorable of Cleveland, Utah, and Minnesota, top 5 protected. That might not be a bad pick. I anticipate Cleveland, Utah, and Minnesota will all be good. But also Minnesota and Cleveland will have older players. I think that pick could be mid to probably low, even in the teens. So I think that's a good deal. In return, they gave back Mark Williams, who I like, but his injuries I think might mean he's cut. Failed the physical. You know, they tried to trade him for basically just Dalton Connect. Failed the physical. That trade got reneged, and he ended up back in Charlotte. Now they're able to flip him again. Sorry, I'm looking for cough drops. My throat hurts. We're like 3 teams in. Now they were able to flip him again for what I think is fine value. And ultimately, with guys like that, guys like Mark, it's sort of tough to think his injury history is going to improve in the future. Right? Like, that's just not really how it works for centers. Especially because it is a lot of lower body injuries. Especially because it is a lot of soft tissue injuries. Like, we're seeing this with Joel Embiid now. Like, that just doesn't ever improve, unfortunately. So, I think this is fine. They got back Liam McNeely. I don't know if I said that, sorry. I might have just said 2025 pick. Got back McNeely, who I ended up being a little bit higher on towards the end of the process. I didn't hate him before the end of the process, but he's shown out in Summer League. Been pretty good. Oh boy. The Charlotte Hornets acquired, well, I guess I'll say what they gave away. Charlotte Hornets gave away Yusuf Nurkic, an expiring contract, $19,375,000. In return, I got Colin Sexton. I was going to say Colin Million for some reason. And a 2030 conditional Clippers pick. And it is the more favorable of a 2030 second round pick of the Clippers and Utah. For them, I get it. I get it. Like, this is totally fine. There's concerns about their big man rotation, but I was going to say let's just move on, but I had to just say some concerns about their big man rotation we'll probably address a little bit more in free agency, but a trade I like for them is the Hornets get Pat Connaughton, 2031 second, and a 2032 second, both from Milwaukee, for Vasilij Micic. Salary dump, totally fine. Team like this, that's the right thing to do. Drafted Konka Nipple. I had him 3. I think the lowest I had him was 6. In the end, I had him at 4 or 3. Intermittent with Trey Johnson and Kaman Malwalk. I think it's totally fine. I love the pick. I think he can be a good fit next to LaMelo. They got Sion James, who's interesting. He's a prospect for sure, but he's interesting. And they got Ryan Kalkbrenner, older player, older center. Looked like he didn't have much defense in college, but reportedly at least changed the way he contested shots and just started blocking everything. Will he be good? Probably not, but we'll see. We'll see. Sorry, I accidentally refreshed the page. Well, I didn't. My laptop just sucks. So, I know I said concerns about who plays center. They did address that fairly well. I forgot they did one of these moves. Like I said, got Kalkbrenner, who's a center, and they signed Mason Plumlee to a 1-year, $3.6 million contract, vet minimum. Signed Trey Mann to a 3-year, $24 million contract. I'm not a big Trey Mann guy, but I think at $8 million, that's totally fine. This is one I don't know if I totally get. Spencer Dinwiddie, 1-year, $3 million contract? Why? 1, Spencer Dinwiddie's not very, very good anymore, and 2, you have no wing depth. It's basically just Brandon Miller. It's Brandon Miller and the ghost of Miles Bridges. His ghost left him once he started hitting on his wife. You're not allowed to have a ghost and be a bad person. Um, but it's a lot of guards. We'll have to see what they do in the future. But I give it like a B, just for signing Khan, taking on a bad contract. Sorry, I didn't give Brooklyn a grade. I give Brooklyn a B minus. I like the moves they made. I think they make sense. They still can potentially make moves in the future. And ultimately, I think that's fine. I should clarify. I'm just going to briefly go over cap situations if it's nothing intense. Sorry, I accidentally skipped it with Brooklyn. Brooklyn, they are 80 million away from the first apron and 92 million away from the second apron. I mean, they are barely over the salary floor. In fact, they still might need to make a move to be over the salary floor, which is not going to be a major move, but they have cheapest payroll in the league, still can take on some humongous contracts. I would not be shocked if they're involved in future trades, and it's just smart asset and space management if they are. Oh boy, this team. The Bulls. The Bears. This team, I'm going to go pretty quick on. They didn't really do much. Sorry, I'm blind. Yeah, the last trade they did was July 1st, and it was a second-round pick swap for Lachlan Olbrich, and in return they gave up Rocco Zakarsky, who I don't hate, but really going to be nothing if we're being totally honest. And then they did just a straight swap with Cleveland for Lonzo Ball. Well, they gave up Lonzo Ball and in return got back Isaac Okoro. I get what they're trying to do here. You're a young team, you're going to be bad, right? Like, why have an older guy with injury concerns? But at the same time, that's also a lot of wings to have. Like, Julian Phillips is somewhere pissed right now that his minutes are going down. But I get it. And ultimately, no, I'm not going to discover Mac OS Sequoia. And ultimately, that's really all they did. Haven't made any sort of signings. I guess they re-signed Trey Jones, 3-year, $24 million. Like, we talked about that on one of my free agency shows. I think that's fine. I don't love drafting Noah fit-wise with Matas. I think both are probably going to be best at power forward. But, you know, if it works out, great. If not, that's potentially because of fit. But I like Noah. I had him semi-high. He is a project. We'll see if the Bulls are willing to be patient with him. And fingers crossed that Patrick Williams just quits the team for their cap situation. Which, speaking of which, let's go check that out now. I'm upside down. Sorry about that. There we go. Now it should be fixed. Like the Jazz and the Nets, they are 43 million away from the first apron, 55 away from the second apron, and their contract or salary cap is at 152. So nowhere close. I guess, like I said, not much to talk about with the Bulls. The Wizards. The Washington Wizards. Well, yeah, I'm not sure why the Wizards are up next in this list. Not the Wizards, sorry. The Cleveland Cavaliers. I give the Bulls a C, by the way. For can you do something, please? My God, your team is awful. It hurts me to look at your team. Now for the other side of this blockbuster trade that we mentioned with the Bulls, the Cavs acquired Lonzo. Honestly, for Isaac Okoro, why not? I think Isaac Okoro is fine. A decent shooter, nothing great, but a good defender. Ultimately, I think they thought they were not going to be able to afford Trey Jones. I think they would have if they got a little bit funky. But not a bad move. Right, like, fine. Free agency wise, they didn't really do much. They're pretty intact. They drafted Tyrese Proctor late, who, not a bad pick, can maybe be another. I don't know. They have a bunch of late round guards who can't really shoot, but are decent defenders and can probably play for them. And then they got Silo Niang, who I don't know a ton about. Declined Chimo OKK's $2.5 million club option. Fine. Two-way to Lou Travers. Fine. It's a bit of a high deal, but 4 years, $38 million for Sammy, Slam, and Merrill. I get it. It's a bit high in my taste for a shooter, but we just saw Duncan Robinson get a crap ton of money, even if that contract isn't guaranteed. So I think that's fine. Larry Nance, 3-year deal, coming home. No, not to LA, back to Cleveland. Cleveland, he's coming home. And then I have mixed feelings on this one. They re-signed Kobe Altman. Kobe's been good recently, but he also doesn't have a great history, so we'll ultimately see how that plays out. But again, I give it a C. I like the addition of Nance. I think that's a good add. I like replacing Trey Jones. I wish you would have waited to see if you could sign him. I mean, this trade would have been available later, if we're being totally honest, but I don't think there's a crazy gap between Ball and Jones. The biggest gap is just injuries. Next, your Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to count the Kyrie Irving extension as part of the offseason, even if we knew it was going to happen. Well, I guess let's just go from the beginning. Dwight Powell, $4 million player option. Irving declined his player option. Flag, drafted number 1, of course. Exum came back, 1 year, $3 million deal. Fine. Exum, nothing great, nothing special, but also just like a fine backup point guard, backup spot starting wing, decent 3-and-D guy. Signed Ryan Nembhard to a 2-way. I didn't mind Nembhard as a prospect. Brother, Myles Nembhard? What's his brother's name? You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to look it up. But this is the only issue I have. 3 years, $118 million deal with a 2027-2028 player option for 1 Kyrie Irving. I don't love the length. I don't love the money. I understand doing this. But also, for all we know, Kyrie just could be terrible. Kyrie relies a lot on his speed and his burst. And we've seen that sort of fall off a little bit in his later years. And an ACL injury specifically affects your speed and burst. So for them just to sign him to such a long-term deal, I don't love. But I get it. You want to compete with Flag. You want to compete with Davis. If Kyrie can come back healthy, maybe I end up with egg on my face. Like, if there's anybody who can come back and be the same, it's Kyrie. But they did sign a good replacement for Kyrie while he's out. D'Angelo Russell, 2 years, $11 million deal. For D'Lo, that's fine. Like, I think D'Lo can be a fine starting point guard. I think D'Lo can be a fine backup point guard. I hate that it means our boy, our man, Jaden Hardy won't get to play as much, but if we're being totally honest, Jalen Hardy's or Jaden Hardy's not shown anything. I didn't hate him before, but now I'm out on him. I hasn't done anything. I think he's just cooked. 3-year, $54 million contract extension with Dallas for Daniel Gafford. Sorry. Again, it feels like a lot. I don't think Daniel Gafford is very good. But also, I think this is fine. You need a center. Ultimately, I would much prefer if you invested in Lively. You already have Davis, who's best at center. You have Flagg, who can probably play center. And I guess I would have rather traded Gafford for a contract, or not a contract, excuse me, a point guard with a similar contract. Who that is? I mean, there's a bunch of point guards, anywhere from Mike Conley to, I don't know, TJ McConnell. I would have much rather traded Daniel Gafford for somebody like that than sign him to that extension, but in terms of value, probably fits well next to Flagg, fits well next to Kyrie. If AD still refuses to play center, is not an awful fit next to him, not great, but even if he's a backup, that's sort of the going rate for backups. The like 3 years, $16 million per year. So I think it's fine. I just would have much rather used Gafford and flipped him for something else, but that one's just opinion. That one's philosophy. Value-wise, I think that's not a bad deal. Let's look at their cap. Cap-wise, they are up high in the cap. They're not quite in the second apron, which is good, but they are $10 million over the first apron, and they are only $1.5 million away from the second apron. So not good per se. If they don't make any other moves, it's probably okay. I don't think you're not eligible for the repeater tax if you are in the first apron, I believe. And if you are, it's going to be smaller than your second apron teams, of course. You know, higher payroll, but lower tax percentage, if I recall correctly. But for Dallas, they're probably a C. They just didn't really do anything. No, I'll give them a B. You acquire a guy in Cooper Flagg. I don't really want to give him any credit for that, but just purely in value, adding a player like Flagg is great. I'm sorry, my back's really hurting. Adding a player like Flagg is, of course, great. Next up, we have, say it with me if you know it, because I don't. Oh, the Denver Nuggets. Let's start off with the obvious trade. Maga Porter Jr. to the Nets for Cam Johnson, and I forgot to mention 2032 first goes to the Nets. Value-wise, I love it. I mean, what is Cam Johnson if not the idealized version of Michael Porter Jr.? I think that offense is going to be terrifying. You have 5 guys on the floor. Gordon, he improved his shot a lot last year. That's still sort of yet to be seen if that holds. But if it does, you have 5 guys who can pass, shoot, dribble, and defend. Maybe not at high levels, but I think as sort of role defenders, I think they're fine. And when I say role defenders, I mean, like, you're not going to have anybody like OG Anunoby who can be a perimeter and post defender, or an elite perimeter defender. Like a guy like Jokic who's going to be fine, clogging up the paint, but you don't want him outside of the paint, if we're being totally honest, outside of the paint. So I don't mind that trade one bit. They lost Russell Westbrook, and they traded Dario Saric for Jonas Valanciunas, which I love DeAndre Jordan. he's cooked. Like he's just washed. So I think it's a fine deal, honestly. I'm not big on Jonas Valanciunas, but as a backup center, I think he can fit that Jokic role well. He's not a great passer, but he's not a terrible passer either. Can grab your rebounds. And ultimately in 16 minutes a night, I'd much rather take Jonas Valanciunas than Dario Saric or DeAndre Jordan. They also do have Daron Holmes coming back, so we'll have to keep an eye on that and see sort of how that rotation works out. But got Jonas, got Cam Johnson, and then they got Bruce Brown. I don't think he starts. I mean, I think they still probably stick with their lineup of Murray, Brown, Johnson now, Gordon, Jokic, but we haven't seen a ton of Brown in the past couple of years. Ultimately, if Brown ends up being good, will be just another short, cheap contract, prove it deal. But if he's even 80% of what he was in that playoff run, like just able to hit open threes, able to make the right read, make smart cuts, like a lot of his game is predicated on his IQ, not necessarily his physical abilities. But if he can continue to hit his shots, if he can continue to be even an okay defender in, the 15 minutes a night he plays, then I think this is a great ad. And if not, you still have your Julian Phillips, you still have your Pickett's, you still have your Hunter Tysons, right? The new GM for the Nuggets is ultimately doing what Calvin Booth didn't, and that's just signing guys to help Jokic. Another move I don't hate, I should say, these are both minimums. Bruce Brown, 1 year, 3.8. Tim Hardaway, 1 year, $3.6 million contract. Sorry, I'm out of water. I say I don't hate it. I don't hate it because it's a minimum fit-wise. I don't love it. You do need a bit of creation off that bench unit. I get it, especially with Westbrook going, but is Tim Hardaway the best option for that? Play for the Pistons. I thought played decent for the Pistons, especially before the head injury, but after that, it wasn't great. I don't know if he starts. I don't know if we have, a Pickett or Tyson revival. Maybe he doesn't play at all. Like, he's the type of player that if he's playing, you'll look to find somebody better. If he's not playing, you love to have him. By all reports, a great culture guy. I think he can be fine as a backup 2 guard. I think he's probably best as a spot backup. But for $3 million, who knows? Maybe he just ends up improving on, the catch and shoot ability he showed last year. Maybe, he just listens to Jokic and becomes a really good off-ball cutter, right? Like, Jokic is, in my opinion, probably the best player ever. Not ever. The best player ever at making the guys around him improve. So I think this is fine. For their cap situation, they are $2 million over the first apron and $8 million away from the second. So they could have made more minimum signings, and my guess is they probably do. They still have, I think, 1 or 2 open roster spots, which could be filled with just free agency signings, or maybe if they have exceptions I'm not remembering. My guess is they end up being just used for two ways, or just cheap bench guys. You have 4 two-ways rather than the 2 allotted slots. But not going over the cap to a crazy level, or not going over the apron, I should say, while getting 2 veterans who could be pretty good for you, I think is great. Getting a real backup center for Jokic, I think is great. You'll still probably end up losing the minute Jokic is off. But with Jonas Valanciunas, that's probably less likely. So I give them a I want to give them an A. My only concern is some of the advantages they had against teams like the Thunder, for example, is their humongous size. And Porter was a big part of that. Porter is probably 5 inches taller than Cam Johnson. I think they lose out on some of the rebounding advantage they had. Because, I mean, if you look, Michael Porter Jr. is a good rebounder, like, genuinely. Like, they maybe lose some of that advantage, and maybe they lose the rare weak side block Michael Porter can give you. But I'm going to give it a B+. I'm a little worried about the rebounding. I love the backup center add. I still probably want them to add one more veteran with the space they have. But overall, if I'm a Nuggets fan, I love this offseason. If you can get one more guy, I easily bump this up to an A, no issue. The Pistons, another team that really hasn't done anything. They didn't have a first this year. They got Chaz Lanier, round 2, number 37. Don't know a ton about him. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, he's like a combo guard who's just like insanely moldable. Let's look up Chaz Lanier, just so I'm not giving you any faulty information. I'm still here. I know I'm quiet. Yeah, his comps are Chris Duarte, Kent Bazemore. Looks to be a decent scorer. That's sort of what I thought. Sort of a moldable guard, maybe can pass a little bit. I think they're underrating his passing a little bit. I recall watching him, just not a ton. I want to say he was on that Illinois team, and, I'm spending much more attention on Kasparis and Will Riley rather than him. But, yeah. Again, if I'm a Nuggets fan, I think this offseason is great. Or, sorry, no, I'm on the Pistons. Sorry. I'm so tired. I'm sure you can tell in my eyes, but I did not sleep last night. Chaz Lanier, Paul Reed re-signed to a 2-year, $10 million deal. I like Paul Reed. I'll say it. I like Paul Reed. I know. I thought he played well in the playoffs, and ultimately, I'd love to see him get more minutes. But at the very worst, he's a totally fine backup third-string center, which is what he will be. Can shoot a little bit, not as good a shooter as Beef Stew, but ultimately can shoot, pass, dribble, maybe score. And those tend to be my guys, right? But I like it. So some people have criticized this move, but $5 million, $5.5 million, call it, for a third-string center who's played well for you and can maybe improve his role, I think that's fine. Duncan Robinson, I'm mixed on this one. He signed a 3-year, $45 million deal with the Pistons after a sign-and trade that sent Simone Fontecchio to the Heat in return for Duncan, and I think like a protected second. Caitlin Collins, 33. Her bikini photo leaves nothing to the imagination. Proof and pick. No thanks. Katie Collins, I mean, very pretty, of course, but let's not advertise that. I mean, like, if I click on it, I'm going to get every virus in the world, but I understand signing him, especially after the Malik Beasley thing. I almost rather would have focused on the draft, try and use some of that money with ultimately the open space that you could have had from this contract. I probably would have tried to buy picks in the draft. I get it. I don't think they knew the Malik Beasley thing at the time, but my only concern is, one, Robinson is worse than Beasley. I think that's more than fair to say. Robinson is worse than Beasley. Robinson might be better than Beasley at shooting, but he's much more inconsistent. Ultimately, I think it's fine just because, this first year, fully guaranteed, second year, half guaranteed, third year, not guaranteed. So that does give the Pistons some flexibility. I imagine they guarantee his contract at least for the next 2 years, but I'd probably rather them put more investment into a Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and who knows, maybe they end up starting over Robinson, but as a shooter and fit-wise, I think this is fine. Basketball-wise, value-wise, even, let's say, not my favorite. I'm going to give them a C. Really not much happening, if we're being totally honest. Their cap situation. They are... Where are they? Where's Detroit? Oh, 26. 165 million. They are 30 million away from the first apron and 42 million away. So, again, they have plenty of space, which is why I'm going a little bit lighter on the Duncan Robinson deal. And, I mean, even if that took the rest of their space, it's not a terrible signing. But, again, I give him a C. I think this is totally fine. Just C for, come on, do something. The Warriors, I'm honestly just going to go quick on this one. Of course, they picked up the option for Quentin Post, exercised the option for Golden State, drafted Kobe Brea. Interesting player, not my favorite in that range, but I think that's fine. Acquired Alex Tuhey and Jemai Mashak, and traded up and got Will Richard. I'm going to give it a C- because they need depth in basically any and all positions. I imagine Will Richard gets some minutes if, I guess Memphis traded for Jamal Mashak. I apologize. Yeah, Memphis traded for Jamal Mashak. But I want to give him an N for not finished. I'm just using every word that is not traditionally associated with grading. With that, I'm just using a random word for every letter that's not associated with grading. I almost don't want to include them just because they still need to make moves. But we'll have to see if they do. There's some talks that they might get Al Horford. We need to see what they do with Kuminga. We need to see, is there another trade? There's still some things they can do. I'm going to give them a D for now because a lot of the good options that were there are past. And even if they don't get Kuminga back, even if they just let him walk, you're not going to get a ton in a sign and trade either. D for do something, honestly. Cap-wise, they're better than you'd think. They are at 170 million, 25 million away from the first apron, and 35 away from the second. So when I say do something, I mean it. You have the cap space to do it. Why not? Do it. Help Steph. You could have honestly beaten the Rockets, but you didn't have depth. So I'm giving them a D for that. I'm going to have to maybe make this a 2-part video. Houston. I don't know if I want to go over all the details of this. They've had a very busy offseason, to say the least. $3 million, 3-year, $39 million deal with Steven Adams. Value-wise, fine. Again, that's sort of the going rate for backup spot starting centers. I'm conflicted. No. I'm conflicted just because they ended up making another move for a center that I'll talk about in just a sec. But Ime Udoka signed a multi-year extension. Great. They extended Fred VanVleet to a 2-year, $50 million deal with a 2026-2027 player option. I don't mind that. People were criticizing that, saying that's a lot of money. He's fallen off a little bit offensively, but I mean, I think Fred VanVleet is perfect for a team like that. A guy who can shoot a bit, score a bit, pass a bit, and ultimately get guys in their places, rally the guys around him. And $25 million, you don't feel bad about benching him. That's funny. This still says they drafted Kamon Malwalk. Let's see. Got rid of Jacques Landale. Got rid of Aaron Holiday. Fine. Re-signed Jayshawn Tate to a 1-year, $2.67 million deal. He's a body. I don't like Jayshawn that much, if I'm being totally honest. But if you want to hear my thoughts on the Kevin Durant trade, just go watch that video. I really don't want to talk about it again. Jabari Smith, 1-year, $122 million rookie scale contract extension with Houston. I like it. Jabari Smith is still incredibly young. I think Jabari Smith still has some pretty decent upside. It's a tradable contract. It's not bad value either. For what Jabari Smith brings, I think, again, value-wise, this is fine. It conflicts me a little bit that they signed, or it perturbs me a little bit that they signed basically just Jabari Smith light minus the talent, especially down low, in Dorian Finney-Smith. 4-year, $52 million deal. That's a lot. Player option on the last year, which he'll pick up. Dorian Smith is not young. Dorian Smith is surprisingly old. So I don't love it. Like, I understand what they're going for. I mean, I understand the argument of you need shooting. Dorian Smith is not a great shooter. I understand he's had some hot shooting seasons, if not season, but he hasn't shown he can consistently be a great shooter, and he's like 32. Why not just play Jayshawn Tate for $16 million cheaper? Look, defensively, this only helps. Obviously, defensively, I think he's fallen off a pretty substantial amount, but by no means a bad player. Another tradable contract, another guy teams will be interested in, yada, yada, yada. You know the spiel. But I don't love it. Clint Capella, 3-year, $21 million deal, part of a sign and trade with Houston. It's a little bit expensive for older Clint Capella, especially for such a long-term deal. But I think it's fine, honestly. People criticize them saying, oh, what are they doing? They already have Steven Adams. They already have Shingu. You can never have too many backup centers, is what I found. Go ask the Pacers. Like, I think 3 quality backup centers. I guess all-star and 2 quality backup centers who can both probably still start. I think that's fine. Like, I think that's totally fine. Re-signed Aaron Holiday. Re-signed Jeff Green. I mean, both on minimums. They traded away, this doesn't say it on here, but they traded away Cam Whitmore for 3 seconds. I don't love that, if I'm being totally honest. Once they declined VanVleet's player option, that's sort of what I thought they would do. I wish they would have picked up the Van Vliet's player option and used a guy like him to try and star hunt. I think Whitmore is still an interesting player. I understand why they did it. I just don't know if I fully agree with it, but either way, they're going to get an A just for getting Kevin Durant. Like, that's a hand-in-glove fit. Cap-wise, not in the first apron. They still have $3.5 million in cap room, and they are $15 million away from the second apron. So getting Kevin Durant and still being under the first apron is pretty good. I'll say it. It's good. So I got to give them an A. Again, they could. We've been through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 teams. We'll do another one. This might have to be a two-parter. My voice is hurting. My voice is hurting up a storm. This is taking a little bit longer than I thought, which hopefully is okay, of course. I try and go in depth with things like this. Like, I don't always go as in depth with some of the smaller signings, but, when it comes to the whole team, especially when it's rankings, I think it's only fair to go in depth. The Pacers. So immediately, I think right before Game 7 of the Finals, they traded back for their pick next year for their pick this year. That pick ended up becoming... it's the guy the Hawks got. I don't know. Rewind and think of him. That's going to bother me now. Asanu. That trade, honestly, sort of swings the offseason a little bit for me. Like, even if it doesn't necessarily directly affect your team now, if you decide to tank next year, if you decide to, ship some guys out for value, I think that's fine. I think that's a really, really good move. Let's see. First move, Talion Peter, drafted by the Pacers, 54th. Tony Bradley, they picked up his team option for $3 million. I think Bradley showed he can be a fine third-string center. They got Cam Jones. That's it. Just Cam Jones. Cam Jones. Signed J Huff. Well, I guess traded for J Huff for a second and a second-round swap. Neither of those are very good, but I think they're fine. Signed James Wiseman back, 2-year, $7 million deal with a team option the year after that. Like a fine prove-it deal. Cam Jones, 4-year, $8 million deal. Quentin Jackson on a 2-way. I don't love this move. Isaiah Jackson, 3-year, $21 million. Smaller center, a guy who relies a lot on his athleticism, coming back from an Achilles. It's not great, but you need a center, so hopefully, your Bradleys, your Huffs, your Jacksons, your Wisemans can all come back fine, and then you have a backlog rather than a lack of centers. But I think this is totally fine. Cap-wise, they are... Well, I guess there's one thing I not forgot, but they let Myles Turner go. It's not necessarily a move, but a bad decision. Reportedly, the biggest difference was, I've seen it anywhere from $5 to $10 million, but the reason Myles left is because they did refuse to go into the luxury tax, which they are $13 million away, which I think Myles wanted 20 rather